On a good day, it can take an hour to drive 15 kilometers across Los Angeles. On a bad day, wildfires choke the sky while rents eat up around 40% of the median household income. Millions endure this grind under the same palm tree skyline sold to the world as paradise. But Los Angeles' daily struggles aren't random. They're the fallouts from decades-old design choices that locked in sprawl, car dependence, and fragile infrastructure. From freeways that plowed through neighborhoods, to zoning laws that keep apartments illegal, to a river poured in concrete, the blueprint was flawed from the start. Today, we'll trace how the Dream Factory became America's most dysfunctional megacity, and why undoing it will be far harder than paving it in the first place. Spain's soldiers and settlers laid out El Pueblo de Los Angeles in 1781 on a neat rectangle of 28 blocks beside the river. The grid covered barely 1 square kilometer, but boosters quickly sold a myth that the surrounding valley was limitless. Between 1890 and 1930, Los Angeles annexed farmland and ranchos until the city covered around 1,300 square kilometers, larger in land area than cities like Phoenix, Denver, or Atlanta. With so much dirt to spare, homes grew outward instead of upward. Even today, the city's density sits at roughly 3,300 people per square kilometer, about 1/8 of Manhattan's 27,000 per square kilometer. That low spread made the automobile feel inevitable. The engine, not the elevator, would knit distant suburbs to downtown. Federal highway money, the 1956 interstate program and later federal road grants, made sprawling, car-centric solutions politically cheap. Building roads was heavily funded, while dense housing and transit were not. Cheap land, a mild climate, and flashy posters showing orange groves under snow-capped peaks lured waves of migrants. They arrived just as Ford's Model T slashed travel times, allowing developers to subdivide canyon floors and coastal mesas. Once considered remote, home buyers paid for yards and garages, not corner shops. And City Hall obliged by drawing wide corridors for future boulevards. The result was a checkerboard of single-family enclaves separated by industrial strips and hillsides. A settlement pattern that depended on one crucial ingredient: roads long enough to connect at all and empty enough to make driving pleasant. Early on, the sprawl paid off. Suburban lots, cheap land, and the Model T made driving practical, but expansion extended commutes faster than planners anticipated. By the 1940s, leaders responded with a simple cure: build freeways through the city to keep traffic moving. That dream flipped to a nightmare in 1947 when engineers unveiled the first master plan of freeways, a spiderweb of high-speed corridors they swore would banish congestion forever. Construction crews obeyed with brutal efficiency, driving concrete walls across East Side barrios, Chinatown, and Boyle Heights. More than 30,000 Angelinos, overwhelmingly Black, Latino, and Japanese American, were forced to make room for just 3 early routes, according to city housing records from the 1950s. Homes vanished in daylight, families received a check and a moving deadline. The trauma lives in street names that no longer connect. Decades later, those corridors are among the slowest in the nation. On some peak hour stretches, traffic crawls at barely commuter speed, and drivers lose dozens of hours a year to congestion. Often reaching for their wheels only makes matters worse. New lanes attract new traffic until congestion returns. Los Angeles now maintains hundreds of freeway kilometers more concrete than any other US city, yet average downtown speeds hover near 35 kilometers per hour. On major arterials during peak hours, every fresh slab of asphalt also deepened the city's car dependence. Zoning codes began to mandate parking, factories switched to trucks, and transit budgets shrank. The front lawn became mandatory, gas stations multiplied along the boulevards, and school children learned that seeing the sights meant sitting in the sedan for hours. The metabolism of the city reorganized around gasoline long before anyone worried about emissions. By the time the last red car rolled away in 1961, Los Angeles had sealed its pact with the freeway, yet the fight to reshape nature was far from over. Next, the city would turn its river into a concrete ditch to protect those same roads. Los Angeles reshaped water just as it reshaped streets. After the deadly 1938 floods, the Army Corps turned the river into a concrete channel. The engineering solved flood risk near downtown, but at a cost. Wetlands and natural floodplains that once soaked water and cooled the basin were paved over. The river became a conduit of the sea, not a living spine for the city. A trade-off that helps explain today's summer heat and stormwater runoff crushing the sewers. Today, 9 of every 10 raindrops within the basin are hustled down that chute and out to sea. Even during drought years, when the city imports water from hundreds of kilometers away, Measure W, passed in 2018, now raises roughly $300 million a year to fund a different approach: pocket parks, infiltration galleries, and green streets that capture and clean stormwater. The county's 2020 River Master Plan envisions continuous paths and restored habitat along the full 82-kilometer course, a linear park larger than 8 central parks laid end to end, nearly 7 square kilometers of continuous green space. But every proposal collides with the same obstacle that doomed the river decades ago: space. Bike lanes want the right-of-way that rail planners crave, developers eye adjacent parcels for housing, neighborhoods fear gentrification. The fight for those narrow banks will decide whether Los Angeles becomes a sponge city or remains a thirsty one. And while leaders trade PowerPoint slides, hotter and wilder weather is already testing the concrete, forcing Angelinos to confront the next invisible boundary: zoning law. When the freeways met their limits, Los Angeles barricaded housing instead. Starting in 1904, the city drafted one of America's first zoning codes. By 1921, it capped building heights at 46 meters in much of central Los Angeles, so downtown towers would not shadow bungalow yards. Layer after layer followed until 2024. A majority of Los Angeles residential land is zoned for single-family homes. On most of these parcels, only 1 kitchen and a 2-car garage are legal, even as the city's population has tripled. Couple that zoning with decades of parking minima, and developers were effectively taxed to supply car storage instead of homes, locking in low density and long commutes. Restricting supply in a coastal basin with finite land drove prices into orbit. In June 2025, the median sale price hit $1.125 million, more than double the national average. A teacher earning the county's median salary would need roughly a $95,000 down payment just to enter the market. Vacancy rates hover below 4%, and converted garages serve as unofficial bedrooms, from Pacoima to Pico Union. On top of that, the January 2025 wildfires destroyed over 11,000 homes across Los Angeles County, making the housing crisis even worse. Sacramento tried to loosen rules with SB 9 in 2022, allowing lot splits and duplex conversions on single-family parcels, a fast route to add homes. But uptake has been slow in many places, permitting frictions. Local pushback and developer incentives mean far fewer new units have appeared than advocates hoped. Los Angeles still processes many of these applications through lengthy approval steps, while neighborhood councils often oppose denser projects. The result? The law's potential collides with local politics and institutional inertia. Salvation, many hope, will arrive on rails, but those rails must first reclaim the glory that Los Angeles once surrendered. You see, long before the freeway age, Southern California moved on electricity. By 1920, the Pacific Electric Red Car Network stretched over 1,600 kilometers at its peak, making it the largest interurban rail system on Earth. For a nickel, you could board in Pasadena and glide to the Pacific, passing orange groves and subdivisions that sprouted along the tracks. The red cars hauled 109 million passengers in their peak year, more than today's metro totals in a region 4 times larger. The miracle collapsed under its own business model. Pacific Electric earned more from selling land than tickets. And once cars became affordable, the company stopped upgrading signals and rolling stock. Service grew unreliable, ridership fell, and by 1961, the last Crimson coach clattered into a scrapyard. Bus patronage plummeted too. Service hours were cut and sidewalks surrendered to parking lots. By 1985, fewer than 1 in 10 commuters used transit, the lowest share among major US cities. What followed was a quarter-century vacuum until voters approved a dedicated sales tax in 1980. Engineers literally bought manuals from Toronto to relearn how to build light rail. 45 years and $22 billion later, Metro operates more than 160 kilometers of rail and is tunneling west under Wilshire Boulevard. The Crenshaw LAX line opened in 2024. The Purple Line extension is scheduled to reach UCLA by 2027, months before the 2028 Olympics, that officials promise will be car-free. Yet tracks alone can't heal a city built for parking lots. Most stations sit on boulevards where zoning still bans mid-rise apartments and bus lanes vanish at city borders. So what happens when climate stress collides with these unfinished ambitions? Nature has begun filing its own building code corrections. In September 2020, the Bobcat fire burned 46,000 hectares, nearly reaching Mount Wilson Observatory. Record heat waves pushed San Fernando Valley temperatures past 49 degrees Celsius. California summers have warmed 2.8 degrees Celsius since 1895, with Los Angeles among the fastest heating regions. Hotter air drains moisture from chaparral, stretching fire season into December. Pavement covering nearly half the basin magnifies heat and repels rainfall. Overwhelming aging storm drains. In February 2025, flooding submerged parts of the 710 freeway near Long Beach under half a meter of water, stranding motorists for hours. The city's adaptation playbook is ambitious. Metro's Vision 2028 promises zero-emission buses by 2030, more shade trees, and 1,000 kilometers of protected bike lanes. However, budget analysis warns billions are missing, with 2024 state proposals threatening to cut transit subsidies and delay electrification. Design got Los Angeles into this fix, and only design could pull it out. Will officials loosen zoning so apartments rise near trains, or keep paving mountainsides that burn every summer? The pieces are there: rail lines, climate funding, and a public hungry for change. But without bold choices, the same streets that once symbolized freedom may keep millions stuck in place. If you could change one thing tomorrow, open zoning, bus-only lanes, or river restoration, which would you choose? Drop your pick below and hit subscribe for more deep dives into the designs that shape us.